Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 27th, 2013 Pittsburgh Board of Public Education Legislative Meeting. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to remind everyone to turn off all cell phones or pagers and put them on vibrate. Will everyone please rise to salute the flag? Thank you. As is our tradition and procedure before the legislative meeting, we would like to recognize students and employees of the Pittsburgh Public School District. I'd like to ask all board members to please come forward, and I will turn this portion of the meeting over to Heather Hobson.
Thank you, Ms. Sheely. This evening, we are celebrating Career and Technical Education Month. As you may know, the district CTE programs allow students to experience the best of both worlds. CTE places our young adults on the path to earn Pittsburgh Promise scholarships, post-secondary degrees, industry-recognized certifications, and jobs with upward mobility. And some students will leave the Pittsburgh Public Schools with not only a high school diploma, but college credits and career certifications. Currently, the district is promoting career and technical education, and our students are helping us to recruit others into the program. Recently, a district-wide competition was held for CTE students to produce a trifold display that illustrates why someone should pursue their passion and obtain industry-recognized certification at the same time. The winning team from Pittsburgh Allderdice's engineering program is here with us tonight. Supervised by Joanne Alchevsky, students Royce Witherspoon, Jawan Hodge, and Deja Ali learned bioengineering, website development, DNA experiments, and much more. Royce and Juanelle are here this evening with their families. The award-winning display is on exhibit in the hall in case anyone wants to check it out after the meeting. As mentioned, the CTE program leads to real-world experience and certification. Also joining us this evening is a group of students who medaled at the recent Skills USA District 9 competition. Skills USA is a national nonprofit organization serving teachers and high school and college students who are preparing for careers in trade, technical, and skilled service occupations, including the health field. 8 of our students competed in the regional competition and brought back a victory to Pittsburgh. They placed either first, second, or third. Here with the Skills USA students is CTE Executive Director Angela Mike, along with the Distinguished Achievement Award. The students are also receiving the Skills USA certificates and medals. Pittsburgh Carrick's Caitlin Luciano is enrolled in the Business of Sports Academy. She competed in the prepared speech category and delivered a speech about how CTE programs prepare students with the skills America's workforce needs. Coming in second place, Megan Lipovsky, a Pittsburgh Brashear student enrolled in auto body repair. Megan competed in the auto body refinishing category, which tested surface preparation skills such as spray gun operation and safety precautions. Her teacher, Shirley Hill, is also accompanying her this evening. Bria Willis, a Pittsburgh Perry High School student, also in the Health Careers Technology program, competed in a job skills demonstration. She had to perform an occupational skill and clearly explain the topic using experiments, displays, or practical operations. And rounding it off in first place was Jonathan Luciano from Pittsburgh Carrick's Information Technology program. You see that it's a family affair because his sister also received an award. He competed in the internet working category, which included design problems and hands-on evaluation with networking. Also in first place, now this name may sound familiar, is Pittsburgh Brashear's John Votter. We're familiar with his father, who is also here with us, Mr. Votter, who's the principal of Pittsburgh Brashear. John, the younger John, is part of the auto body repair program. He competed in the related technical math competition and solved problems commonly found in skilled trades. Congratulations to all of our CTE students. Thank you. This concludes our presentation for the evening.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call?
Mr. Brentley,
Here.
Mrs. Scalese,
Here.
Mrs. Fink, Mrs. Azuda,
Here.
Dr. Hawley,
Here.
Mr. Eisler,
Present.
Mr. McCray,
Here.
Mr. Sumter,
Present.
Ms. Shealy,
Here.
all members present.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mr. Sumter, would you please share our core values and beliefs?
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. The Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to educating each and every student to their maximum level of achievement. The Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to providing a safe working environment for students, staff, and parents. Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to providing support in an effective and efficient manner. Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to distributing resources in an equitable manner to the maximum extent feasible. And last but not least, the Pittsburgh Board of Education is committed to encouraging and improving engagement from parents, community, etc., within the Pittsburgh Public School District. These 5 are the core beliefs, commitments, and goals of the Pittsburgh Board of Education, and collectively we feel that that will result in higher achievement throughout the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Would everyone please turn to the minutes from January 23rd, 2013? Are there any corrections, deletions, or additions?
Second.
I actually have a correction. Before you do that, so can you withdraw that, please? So that I can make the correction.
I withdraw it.
I can't, I lost my minutes, sorry. On item number 14, the votes are listed wrong. Mr. Weiss, is that sufficient?
Well, I think you should just state what it should read, and the minutes will be corrected to reflect that.
Okay. And item number 15, Propel Hazelwood Charter School, page 6, was defeated by a vote of 4-4-1. Yes votes should read Teresa Calese, Sherry Hazuda, William Eisler, and Shireen Shealy. No votes should read Mark Brentley, Jean Fink, Regina Hawley, Thomas Sumter. Abstentions should read Floyd McCray.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed, same sign. The minutes stand approved. At this time, I would like to read the executive session statement. In addition to executive sessions announced at the legislative meeting of January 23, 2013, the board met in executive sessions on February 12, 2013, February 20, 2013, and immediately before this legislative meeting to discuss various personnel matters that may include, but are not limited to, administrative vacancies and positions opened and closed. Finally, at the executive session immediately before this legislative meeting, the board discussed student discipline cases that involve violations of various portions of the Code of Student Conduct. The board does not vote at executive session. We will begin this evening with a committee report on education that is before you. If you would please turn to page 11 of the report, I'd like to give you the student suspension, transfer, and expulsion numbers for the month. 41 students were suspended 4 to 10 days. 0 students suspended 4 to 10 days and transferred to another Pittsburgh public school. 5 students expelled out of school for 11 days or more. 0 students expelled out of school for 11 days or more and transferred to another Pittsburgh public school. Items 19 and 26 at the committee report on education were pulled for further discussion at agenda review. Are there any additional items in the committee report on education that board members would like pulled at this time? 19 and 26. Seeing none, we'll go to item 19, which I think is the Colfax trip to Costa Rica. Anyone?
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Shealy. I am the one who asked to have that pulled.
for further discussion. I want to thank the central office personnel for giving us information on the trip. However, I want to talk just a little bit about this particular board tab. I want the Colfax community to know that I support this field trip. I always support a field trip in which students have the opportunity to really experience some exciting activities that will enhance their lives and also the instruction within their classroom. However, I am a bit disappointed that with 2 classes of 8th graders, there are only 10 students that will be attending this particular field trip. I know that it is very pricey, and we might give some ideas on how this might be done a little differently if you didn't start fundraising in September and do fundraising for multiple years for this type of field trip. Ask for donations from other people so that you can get more students to go. I would never deny the 10 students and the 3 teachers that will be accompanying them for this field trip. But in terms of equity, I do believe that there should have been more students afforded the same opportunity to go on this type of experience. So I want to say thank you to the board, the central office people who actually provided me with this information. I want to say congratulations to the principal and those students that will be going and the teachers. But I am going to say to Colfax and to the district that we should have had more students participating in this type of experience so that it's not just the 10 that can, but more students that have the will and want to go. Thank you.
No other discussion on that item? Okay, thank you. Dr. Hawley? No, pool for further discussion, Mr. Brentley, I'm sorry. And so we'll move on to item 26, Hill House Passport Academy Charter School. We will just go around the table, I think. Mr. Brentley?
Yes, I have a question, Mr. Weiss. The definition of pooled versus tabling.
Oh, I'm sorry, I think there was more of a question.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
yeah, if you can explain that.
Well, the pulling of an item is done by the administration, and although the board uses the term pools for further discussion and agenda review, the use of that term there just means that it's going to be discussed. Tabling is an action by the board which essentially moves an item out of consideration until it is brought off the table later. So the principal difference is that if the administration wishes to pull an item, and it has been done here, if the board wishes to table it and does not wish to take a vote on it and consider it at a later time, then there's a motion to table in a second, and then the board votes on that, and the matter is no longer considered at that meeting.
Okay, so the table just simply removes it before us as a vote, and it can be pulled, can be presented back before this board at a later date. Now, that would also apply for the charter school, this item, number 26.
Well, an item that's tabled, then there's no further consideration of it at that meeting. There are some rules about when it can be brought up again, but with the charter school items, there is a time limit under the charter school law by which a board must make a decision on an application. And if the board does not make a decision within that time period, then the application is deemed denied under the charter school law, which means it's considered a denial. And the proponents of the charter school, the applicants, have the right to appeal directly to the Charter Appeals Board without schooling through signatures and all that sort of thing. We had something similar to that occur last month when there was a tie vote, and that's the equivalent of no action. So the long and short of it is that if a charter application vote is tabled, the board has to take action within a certain period of time. Failing that, and a tabling would be no action, then that's a deemed denial, and the applicants have a right to appeal to the Charter Appeals Board or reapply. If they reapply, the board must consider the reapplication within 45 days of the date of reapplication.
So the tabling is, we have a short window immediately after that tabling to still do it within the timeline before their appeal process kicks in.
I believe with these applications before you tonight, if there is no action taken on any of them, or the board does not take action to approve or deny these tonight, then that will be a deemed denial, and they can either reapply, resubmit, or appeal to the Charter Appeals Board. You don't have an additional month to vote on these.
Okay. Well, you know, the questions I raised that for a reason. Dr. Lane, at the agenda review, I'd asked for staff to reach out to Mr. Philpar and the folks with the Hill House Passport Academy Charter School to start some discussion to see if there's an opportunity for a partnership. This is a unique charter school, something that I don't believe that the district is doing, and I thought there would be a great opportunity for even a pilot program with the district. And so I wanted to know, have you made that contact yet, and what was the response?
Mr. Brentley, I personally have not. I'm not aware if other staff may have done that, but I do know if we were to consider such a thing, we'd still have to act on their application. Furthermore, it would probably take us more than a week to be able to give you a good answer on it, were there any possibilities there. So, and I don't know, has anybody reached out? Because I'm not aware that they have. No, no one has. I'm not saying that cannot happen, but as I said, that certainly would take us longer than a week to be able to let you know if there were some possibilities.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, well, tell me this, Mr. Weiss, if this application or all the applications were denied, is there anything that would prohibit this board from establishing a relationship with them in terms of a partnership with the districts?
No, I mean, they would have the option of reapplying, and the district could have that discussion at the administration level. So the short answer is no, there's nothing to prevent that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Brentley, Mrs. Scalise, I guess, can I interrupt? So to Mr. Brentley's question, well, I think he asked, have you or had you done it? I guess my question is, do you intend to do it?
We certainly can, yes. If that's the board's wish, we certainly are willing to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Mrs. Scalise. Mrs. Fink? Mrs. Azuda, Dr. Hawley?
Yes, I just want to make a statement in terms of this particular project that the Hill House is trying to do for students. From the information that was given to us, I don't believe that I've ever seen the district actually go out and seek children that have dropped out of school and ask them to come back, which is what which was given to us over the weekend as that we are doing that. And I don't remember ever seeing that in my many years in the district. Can somebody tell me what it is? I haven't seen it.
And I'm looking here to see, in terms of the preparation of that response, who can address that for you, Dr. Hawley.
Dr. Hawley, in the past we have, and so we've had many efforts to do it, not exactly in this format, but we did have a program that was when CEP was here, and again, we did try a program. It faded away due to lack of, I guess, lack of enrollment. And so I'm not sure if that was lack of outreach efforts, but there were concerted efforts to do outreach. We've also worked with community partners. There are also other outside partnerships who bring children back in for dropout, after children have dropped out, and we partner, but we've not had something in-house since either one of those programs.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear because I do know of one program that's at the Kingsley House under Communities and Schools where they actually have students there coming to school there, and they will receive a regular diploma from their high school, but they're not under any charter school rules. And so this denial, they would give us some ideas on how we could actually service our children. But beyond that, let's just be honest, we haven't done a good job in this area. So here is an organization that's willing to reach out and really do some really good work with children who have lost their way. And this is a place for them to come back in order to get their regular high school diploma, not a GED, but a regular diploma from their high school and help. And I have to say that I'm really excited about this particular project because as we were at the Hill Education Committee meeting last night, we saw some really good work that's going on at University Prep, where they're actually trying to do some of this with students that are already in school. But here is another complement to help students that are out of school to get back into school. So I will be supporting this. And I know that our committee has done a lot of work to identify whether or not this charter school should be upheld as a charter. But here I can really see where people are reaching out to do some different work with students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mr. McCray? Mr. Eisler?
Ms. Shealy, the one concern I have about this, and Mr. Weiss, if you can provide some insight, because of the agenda review, we did not have, I don't recall, really, we try to get some clarification on this. The failure to provide a governance structure in compliance with all federal, state, and local regulations in the Pennsylvania Public School Code. If they did not comply with that, then they do not meet the law as it appears today, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So in terms of your office reviewing this, if they don't meet this, is this going to prohibit them from becoming chartered? Will the Commonwealth come in and say, since they didn't meet it, they can't be a charter?
Well, the issue here is the governance structure, which counsel for this applicant has discussed with our office, and I believe the applicant recognizes that they have issues to deal with. They're not anywhere near insurmountable. It's a matter of the correct nonprofit structure and a separate board and all that sort of thing. But as the application sits before you, they are not structured properly.
In the conversations, and I don't know how detailed you can get on this, and I don't want to violate any confidences between your office and the applicant, but from what you've said, the applicant is willing to comply with the state law with a separate governance structure?
The applicant is willing to do that, is in the process of doing it, and should the board approve the recommendation, which is to deny the charter, my understanding is that they will resubmit in the revised structure, and as I've indicated in agenda review, the board will have 45 days from the date of resubmission to act on it, which is a lot shorter time than an appeal, which can take over a year.
So they do plan to resubmit?
Well, that's what we've been told. I can't
I mean,
speak
in
for
other
them.
words, they're going to comply with this.
Yes,
They have every intention to comply with
Yes.
this particular piece of the law
yes.
and to make it a more legal document.
Make it a legal document,
Great.
yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Osler. Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. It's my understanding that the applicant has completed the paperwork for becoming a 501c3, so that the governance structure is in place. I understand, I'm aware of the fact that it wasn't in the application as submitted, but all that I would, not all, I would suggest to this board that we not overburden this applicant, that I would recommend that we table this item. If it's a straight denial, then if they were to appeal, they would have to go through the hurdle of getting petition signed, so many signatures, and then go through the appeal process, which I'm not thinking they would want to do. However, if they chose that as an option, tabling it is the same as a denial, but it just removes that petition aspect or requirement for the applicant. Sure.
Just a point of order, because I thought Mr. Weiss addressed Mr. Brentley's question slightly differently. If we were to deny it or table it, whatever, they could resubmit immediately without the signatures.
Absolutely. I'm talking about going to the appeal process.
So I guess what's
What I'm saying
unclear.
is the option, they have the option of appealing or resubmitting. If you vote it down, if they were to choose the option to appeal, they have a petition requirement. If you table it, they could go straight to an appeal without the petition requirement. Could you clarify that?
That's correct, but just to be clear, if the board votes to deny the charter, the board then approves the item before you. I know it's a bit convoluted because a yes vote means you're denying the charter. The applicant would have the choice of appealing to the Charter Appeals Board through the normal process, which involves signatures, and that entire appeal process can take well over a year, or it can resubmit and have a much shorter time for consideration and have their situation resolved. If the board would table this, which is a deemed denial, the applicant could appeal without signatures, but the delay in getting it considered is still the same, a year or more, or it can resubmit. So the only real difference on the appeal side is no signatures.
That's the point I'm trying to make with regard to tabling versus voting it down.
Just one more. If we table it, they can't resubmit.
They can resubmit.
Okay, thank you.
And that's why I was,
If there's a tabling of this board, doesn't the board have to bring the item back to the table?
Normally, you would, but with charter applications, you have so much time to decide them. And if you don't decide them within that time frame, the law says there's a deemed denial, and then the applicant can do what it wants to do. That way, these applications aren't tied up forever.
So if we table it this evening, they have how much time do they have where we must re-bring it back to the table for them?
You wouldn't bring it back to the table. They would have to either resubmit it or appeal it. Once you table it, it's gone from here until they resubmit it.
Thank you.
It's different than a normal tabling of a motion for that reason. You have that deadline.
the point I'm trying to make is that the clock has run out, so that if you table it, it's a denial. However, the denial is not on the record for the charter. They still have the option of appealing or resubmitting. Appealing, because it's tabled, removes the requirement of getting the signatures. That's all that's involved.
Forgive me, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to understand what's different from what we did last month.
In terms of tabling nothing, that applicant has a choice of resubmitting or appealing.
Right, and we voted according to what we were asked to vote, and they had the
Well,
same.
in
That's
that
what I'm
case,
trying to understand.
Well, in that case, you didn't table it, but by virtue of a 4-4-1 vote, there was no action, which is effectively the same as a table. There's no action. It's, the law is somewhat convoluted in this sense, but it was designed to give applicants the benefit of a time certain in which their application would be either approved or denied, then they can move on.
I would like to make a motion that we table item number 26.
Second.
Discussion on the motion?
So it's a priority motion. It's either a yes or no vote. There's no discussion
Well,
on a table.
he tabled it before I had a chance to say anything then.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
well, okay. go
Okay.
ahead. You have the gavel, so you can speak.
Can I gavel you?
Yes.
No.
Always.
No, that's okay.
Okay, who made that motion?
Mr. Sumter made the motion and Mr. Eisler seconded.
Okay.
Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call, please?
This is on tabling 27? Oh, 26, I'm sorry. Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
No.
Mrs. Fink? No. Mrs. Azuda?
No.
Dr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray? No. Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Can I ask a question? Can I get a clarification?
Sure.
Because clearly I'm the deciding vote. So if we table it, they still have the opportunity to take the easier path of resubmitting?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so item 26 is tabled.
Thank
So-
you, Mr. Weiss. There were no other items mentioned for additional discussion. Are there any other items in the Committee on Education that anyone would like to discuss at this time? Seeing none, Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink? Yes. Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Dr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy? Yes. Okay, the report's approved, 9-0, and as stated, 26 is tabled.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. We will now move on to the Committee Report on Business and Finance. Item number 17 in the Committee Report on Business and Finance was pulled for further discussion at agenda review. Are there any additional items to be pulled for discussion at this time? Mrs. Khaleesi.
Like to pull number 7, please?
Any others? Okay, we'll start the discussion with number 7, and I think Mrs. Khaleesi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did ask at agenda review if there was going to be any subcontracting that would be involved with this item. Mr. Campbell, I did not, other than the on the floor answer was that there would be not. Could you elaborate on that for me, please?
So, as far as the work being performed by this organization, they will meet with the state requirements. Subcontracting being defined as hiring an additional company to perform work.
I'm sorry, can you be more clear? Does that mean yes, they will be subcontracting, or no, they will not?
No.
They will not be subcontracting.
And I will ask Mr. Weiss to provide clarification from the procurement perspective as well.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Weiss? I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, from the what perspective?
Procurement.
Oh, okay, thank you.
As in a procurement card? I'm sorry.
Well, procurement means acquiring of services or products. I mean, the item before you is a contract with B&S Communications to perform work at a number of schools on the wireless project. If this firm performs all the work and does not engage another firm to perform some of the work on its behalf, which is a subcontract, then B&S is doing all the work and there are no other companies involved. B&S may utilize the services of tradesmen who may not be full-time employees. They may be hired out of hiring halls, et cetera, but there is no other company doing the work. So if I can analogize it to a regular construction project, you may have a contractor that has the prime contract, and he subs out certain work to other contractors to do, and the board is provided with those subcontracts. According to Mr. Campbell, this work will be performed solely by B&S. There are no subcontractors involved, and that's as much as I can say. I mean,
Thank you. With all due respect, I will not be supporting this. I'm not very comfortable with the answer that I'm receiving. I'm not even sure what you just said, Mr. Weiss. I mean, what I'm trying to understand is if there will be subcontracting. In other words, there will be other companies that will be brought in to do this work from different states, from different places. And that's the guarantee I want, that none of that will take place, that B&S will actually be doing all of this work. Now, whether they're using even our own union people to do the work, I have no problem with it, but I want to make sure that they're not then hiring other companies that bring other people into our city.
it's going to be done under a facilities type contract. It is not a purchase order, it's a facilities contract. Our office approves all these contracts, and the contract will state that there is to be no subcontracting of work, which is not an unusual provision in certain kinds of contracts. So I can tell the board at this public meeting that the contract with B&S will contain a provision that B&S will self-perform all the work and not have any subcontractors. That's about as much as can be done. Now, whether that addresses your concerns, I don't know, but I will tell you that, because we're doing this under a regular facilities contract, not a purchase order.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. I still will not be supporting this item. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else on item number 7? Seeing no comments, we will move to item number 17. Mr. Brentley? Am I saying the wrong number?
Before I make my comments concerning Schenley, the resolution here, I do want to say that I am extremely disappointed in the structure of our meeting today. Our meetings were supposed to be held downstairs on the first floor. We have poor accommodations for the public as we conduct this meeting now. I'm extremely embarrassed to say that I have people that are facing my back. It's inappropriate, especially when you have a facility that's large enough to accommodate the public. And so I am expressing my disappointment, and we have to find a way to put the public first when we have these meetings. No one should have to come to a public meeting and stand for an hour or 2 hours when we're talking about spending their money. I'm sorry. I don't, whatever you like.
Thank you, because as a group, as a board, we did not make any agreements or have discussions about legislative meeting. That's a fair topic to bring up, but you made a statement that we agreed that we would have meetings downstairs, and legislative was never on that table. Okay. But that it's fair to bring it up. Okay,
and let me just say in closing, because I'm not going to get into a tit for tat here. The point is, if we didn't agree on it, the point is doing what's right. We can't split hairs on this. The first floor conference room, it's much larger, much accommodating. First floor, public access, you name it. And we cannot justify that. You have to simply say, this is the public's dollar. The doors should be open. What do? Our doors are locked. Okay, and if you're lucky enough to get into the side doors, then the doors that lead to the floors, they're locked. And then if you're lucky there, then you have to come upstairs and squeeze into one of the rooms. And if you're lucky enough to get one of the seats, which we have 80, 90% of the folks sitting in the seats are employees. And that's a little unfair. So we cannot say that because we didn't agree to put that on the floor to consider our legislative meeting, it's still unacceptable. We should accommodate the public when we have access. We have access. We should want them here, and we should accommodate them when we're here. Number 17, the question with the Schenley, as I mentioned before, to avoid a possible continued bloodied battle here, and a very divisive one, and we have to admit to that. I'd like to make a motion that we would just simply table this item. There are other options out there where individuals are, thank God for their creativity, that are being creative and finding ways where we can keep this building, this wonderful facility, this historic landmark, where we can keep it in the district and make it a very, very good facility for our students. I am going to make a motion that we just simply table this, allow some time for folks to kind of cool down, and to also allow folks that have some suggestions on how we can reopen the school and make this thing work. And so that is a motion before I make any other comments, and I am hoping and asking that my colleagues would simply agree to support this motion, and let's possibly move on. So that is my motion.
Second.
Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please?
This is on the motion to table item 17. Mr. Brentley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
No.
Mrs. Fink? No. Mrs. Zuda?
No.
Dr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
No.
Mr. McCray?
No.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy? Pardon? Yes. Okay, the motion to table is defeated 4-5, so item 17 remains on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mr. Brentley, you still have the floor.
Yes. It was important that we at least do that because, unfortunately, like a couple of months ago when this item was pulled, when it was untabled by my colleague, Mr. Eisler, he was asked not to do it because of the possible way that this could make a very divisive board. And it still exists. You see, this went right down the lines of race. And it's unfortunate, but that's a realization here in this city, because no matter what way you slice it, where you're located, Schenley is considered a Hill District school. Yes, you can call it Oakland, you can call it Upper Oakland, but the bottom line is that it was the normal feeder pattern for those who lived in the Hill District. So when you talk about shutting it down and not allowing that community to have a real high school, it becomes racist because they don't have access like others. Squirrel Hill, you have a wonderful high school, you have Alder Days. For this community, they don't have it. And so now you have people drawing lines. And so the question is, when this building was closed down in 2008, we were told the issue of asbestos. We now know that it is not the case of asbestos. And so in the real world, you would refer to that as a lie. But on this board, you can say misinformation or whatever way you want to call it, but it was a lie. The asbestos were nowhere near the dangerous levels. Secondly, we turned around, and as a district, we spent millions of dollars based upon a lie. There should be a truth squad out there to step forward and to put us in place for the damage that this board has done to students throughout this city. We shut down Schenley, you told them it was full of asbestos. And then you shipped them over to Reisenstein, and we dumped $7-8 million into Reisenstein. And then you left them in that building for 4 years, and Mark Revelle said, I think we're going to sell the building. You just put $8 million into the building. Okay, now we're going to move you to Peabody. And then we put money in Peabody. Now here we are, shifting these kids around, and no one stopped to talk about the dollars being wasted. But more importantly, nobody talked about the lie that was told and how we continue to move forward. So here we are now. Here's an opportunity to sell the building. And the question that you have to ask is, if we are in a financial crisis, why would you sell a building that is worth $70, $80, $90 million for $5 million? Somebody should go to jail. Why should you sell the building for $5 million? And don't go any further, because there's more. We're selling it for 5.2. The law states that we have to pay off the debt first. The debt is $2 or $3 million. So when we finish, we may walk away with $2, maybe $3 million. That's taxpayers' dollars. And now we will sit here trying to justify the sale for this building, at the same time destroying a community, at the same time inconveniencing other students, at the same time we've never, ever explored the possibilities. This other young man out there, Mr. Edward, he's here. How nice, never met you. Yes, sir. Never. We never took the opportunity of even engaging him. And by the way, I've never met you, so no one can say this is planned, okay? But we appreciate your ability to dream. We have PhDs at this table, and no one's thought about thinking creatively, of doing anything outside the box, but no one's upset about giving it away for $3 million. Those are our students, and they deserve it. And so the reason for trying to table it is to simply allow it, allow some folks to cool down a little bit. And I don't know if he can come through with what he said. I don't know. It's my job to see if he can, though. That's my job. You say you can raise our money, sit down, show me. And if there's a possibility, and it's my job to do that for these students. It's our job to do that. And so as a father of 5, still have a child in the system, you know, it just turns my stomach when we can sit here and have a straight face and cold heart for kids. The building is needed in this community. This building, we know that the Peabody building, which is just about bursting at the seam, can benefit from the Schenley building. We're not going to even talk about the millions of dollars we're putting in. There's got to be an agency that can come in and just, you know, stop us before we hurt ourselves. You know, somebody's got to come in and say, wait a minute, you put 8 to 10 in Reisenstein, you close it, then you sold it for pennies. And then you're coming over here, you're doing the same thing for Schenley. You know what it really looks like? It looks like corporate folks and some very powerful people have decided we're done with public education. And we're wiping you all out, including you, the poor students as well. And that's where the tragedy is. That's where the tragedy is. If we are educators and if we are here to represent these students, we owe it to ourselves. You know, why don't we have a dream session? Take one Saturday. Let's bring in food. Let's lock the doors. And let's get some of those sharp minds at CMU and Pitt and Carlo and Chatham. And let's bring them in and say, dream. Dream. How can you make this work? How can we make it work? And so it just angers me to no end when there's no thinking. I do have a question, and Mr. White, somebody can ask me. That's in the resolution here, PMC. Is that an acronym for Pitt's main campus? No. Oh, okay. don't know.
I think you know the answer to that.
No, I just had to ask. Okay, because it makes you really think about who's really here and who's really involved with what's going on with our students. And I love everything about this city, but I'm not willing to gamble on these students. I'm not willing to give away. You know, why did we not evaluate this? No. East End, if you take it now in East End, from the Reisenstein building to this Schenley building, you have an entire region now that if we ever got back to educating students, we don't have a facility large enough. We don't, and we can't afford to build one, of course. You don't have a facility large enough. The Reisenstein giveaway, and now this is the Schenley giveaway. You know, and I can feel for those folks who live around there knowing what's getting ready to come there. We know exactly what it is. And so I'm disappointed that it's coming down to this. I am also disappointed, too, that we didn't table it because this thing can get nasty, and I expect it will continue. My question, again, is over the last 2.5 to 3 months, we've seen all of these articles and stories covered about the withholding of information on this board. When we were told that there was asbestos in the building, we were told that. And then the information was made available, and no one from this administration told us about it. No one. But what was also interesting is that nobody in none of the articles made a phone call to Mark Roosevelt, who was a superintendent, to ask him, why did you do it? What did you do with the information? Mr. Eisler, you were president then. No one interviewed you. Was that information withheld? And why did they not share it with us? We could have avoided this nasty, drawn-out battle. Mr. Weiss, you were our solicitor. I believe you were supposed to monitor this stuff for us. Was this information withheld? And why were we not given that information? Here we are now in a full-blown out, divisive fight in this city that could have been avoided, and at the same time, we're giving away property. So I will not be supporting this, and I can tell you, as well as all those who are watching this, this is only step one. This is unbelievable. This is my life's work while I'm on the board now, because this is unbelievable, the waste. This is unbelievable, and we laid off teachers. Some schools don't have libraries, and you're going to give them. You know, if I supported the sale of this building, we can close our deficit with that sale. If we just asked for a few more dollars, but we're taking the bare minimum. It's unbelievable. I'll have some other comments later.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Mrs. Khaleesi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to waste time in trying to correct some of the misinformation that was just brought to this table. This has been a cross that we've been carrying for 5 years. You want to worry about students that do not have a library? Then worry about the amount of empty buildings that we have that we still have to keep heated and in some sort of condition, or we will be in serious, serious problems. It's been 5 years since Schenley's been closed. We have tabled it before so that it could go through a better process where the community could be part of it, where everybody involved could be part of it. We haven't done any injustice in that sense. We've allowed everyone that wanted to put a bid in, put the bid in. We have never excluded anyone, and I was the chair of business that watched over that. I find it very disappointing that there's some accusations of that sort when that wasn't true. And we have tabled it. We've tabled it because some of the colleagues around this table of mine chose that it needed to go through a better process. We've done that. We're not going to get a better price than this, and if we do, if I may, please. Thank you. I'm not trying to cause a problem for anyone. I've been on this board for 12 years, and I've been part of 18 contract negotiations with unions. I've never given anybody an issue. I've been there for everybody in any kind of way I possibly could. But at the end of the day, this board's main concern has to be the children in the classroom. It's what our main job is. And I would love to have a Saturday to have a think tank among us, but with all due respect, will everybody show up? And I'd have to take a day off work to do that. I'm ready to move on this because I think it's time. It's a very heavy, heavy load on us, and we have to put this building back on the tax rolls. We need the taxes just to continue. Madam Chair, I'm not going to kill us tonight on this.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi. Can I please ask the people in the gallery to keep your comments to a whisper, because it's hard for us to hear each other with comments coming from outside of the table. Thank you. Mrs. Fink?
There we go. Okay. Some of the things that have been brought up about Schenley, it has been closed for 5 years, and the kids that lived in the area were bounced around, and that's nothing that any of us ever wanted to see happen. However, the proposal that I saw for another company to buy the building and create another school was not a proposal for the neighborhood children. It was a proposal for a tuition-paying magnet school or a tuition-paying private school. Considering what that tuition would have to be, nobody in the city of Pittsburgh could afford it, and we have a perfectly good, in fact, a very fine performing arts school in the city. When Schenley was built, it was the first high school, I believe, in the country to cost a little over $1 million. We're selling it for 5.2 after we've used the heck out of it for over 90 years. If I could get that kind of a deal on my car, man, that thing would be gone tomorrow. You know, I feel very conflicted about this because the company that is the low bidder, and I've seen the presentation, they've done some beautiful restoration work of some historic buildings. I've also heard some things about bringing in labor, non-union labor. They've been buying some other buildings in the Pittsburgh area. And I would encourage them to work out labor contracts with all of our local unions. There is no need to import labor. We have plenty of people here. The only thing that has made me hesitate at all about the sale of Schenley is the fact that, in my estimation, the sale of that should be doing two things. It should be bringing tax dollars into this school district that we desperately need, and it should be providing employment for Pittsburgh people. And if that works out, if those people are good to their word that they will sit down with our local unions and we will talk about jobs for Pittsburgh people on Pittsburgh projects, then I think we've accomplished a great deal of good. I've had a lot of soul searching over this sale, and I don't see how I can possibly not support the sale after all things have been considered. But I am praying that these people are good to their word, because they did say they would sit down, they would talk about labor issues with our local unions. If they do not, then I think that the media in this city because they've got a lot of other big projects planned. I think the media in this city ought to really ask, what's going on? What are you doing to our city? So I'm counting on good jobs for good Pittsburgh workers, and finally, getting this beautiful grand old lady that is Schenley repurposed into 90 years of more useful life.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. Mrs. Azuda?
I was not on the board yet when the first piece of plaster fell, but I'm sure those that were never thought that that was going to be the drop heard around the world and that we would be sitting here in 2013 still discussing it. I did get elected to the board. We did get estimates for repair. We heard lots of opinions at the time of what should happen. Not too many folks seem to notice that while there were some excellent things going on at Schenley, there was an excellent culture that was prevalent there, that we weren't really doing a very good job of educating the students who that was their feeder pattern. We didn't service them well in that building. But largely because of the culture that I heard from the students, from the alumni, the passion that they spoke with, I felt at the time when we took the vote that the repairs being recommended were more than what was necessary. I thought we could get the building so the students could use it and do it less expensively. So at that time, I did vote to keep Schenley open. I thought it was the right thing to do. But that was at that time. Today, we're in a different world. We are not getting the public funds we were. The political climate is pro-charter school. Public education is heading more and more towards a private fundraising or profit-making entity. The school has further deterioration. The two bids that we got, it was recommended from this board that we go back and get more bids, and we did that. The two bids came in the $50 million. Both of those bids, neither of those bids included the cost of a new roof for the building, even though both companies recommended that if we were going to fix the interior of the building, the roof would need to be repaired as well. And so that would be in addition to those costs. In addition to that, 22% of the classrooms in the building are too small for PlanCon. And because we asked them for minimal repairs at this time, 22% of the rooms wouldn't be usable in that building by requirements that we have to deal with today. And so, you know, we're here. Now it's 2013. Now I've been on the board for 5 years, and for all 5 of those years, we've been talking about Schenley. We are still being asked to slow down. We're being asked to get estimates. We're being asked to attend meetings, to read emails, to answer phone calls, to table the vote, more and more time. But it just keeps going on and on. You know, to say we're moving too quickly, we've been doing this for the 5 years I've been on the board. We have an offer in front of us that will put this building back on the tax rolls. That's something we have to consider. That is income to us. We had at our public hearing on Monday night, multiple residents of the community saying, we hate to see the school closed, but if it's going to close, we are in favor of this developer. We feel good about what he'll be doing to the community. As I've said, this has been since it started before I got on the board. It's been for the 5+ years I am on the board. And so tonight I will be voting to support the selling of Schenley School. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Hawley.
Mr. Weiss, for buildings that become student housing, do we get any tax revenue from that building?
If they're privately owned, yes.
If it's privately owned?
In other words, if universities or colleges own residence facilities, we don't get tax revenue. If private individuals own property that has student housing, they pay real estate taxes.
Okay. So I just want to be clear because it's been stated that it'll be back on the tax rolls. So those board members that feel as though it'll be back on their tax rolls, you're certain that this building will not be sold to either the two major universities in Oakland who actually need housing in Oakland for their students. And I'm not so sure that that won't happen. But I want to go, I want to say this. I respect the Schenley Farms and the Hill District residents that came out to speak either in favor of selling Schenley or keeping Schenley as a school. But as a non-resident of that area, but as a board member that has to look at what is in the best interest for students, I have to say for two reasons. Number one, Schenley was the most highly occupied school in the school district. They were highly subscribed. And yes, they were not able to meet all of the academic needs for many of the students that were in that building. But that can be said about every high school in this district except for Kappa at the time. It was being closed. So I needed to put that out there because a lot of people, not even a lot of people, some of you think that the children weren't learning, but there were some other activities that were going on there. And number one, it was the diversity. People actually wanted to be in that building. There are long-term relationships that have grown from both African American, European American students, and others from that building. And that's something that I feel the district actually should be supporting relationships among the students that actually attend our schools. Children who were very wealthy, children who were middle class, and children who were on free and reduced lunch all went to that school. Many of the teachers that actually work in this school district sent their children to that school. So it had lots of diversity, not just racial-wise, but also money-wise, economically-wise. Can you put a dollar sign on that kind of environment? No. And I wouldn't be so passionate about this if I thought that what had transpired at the very beginning was where we got truthful information. And I was not on the board at that time. And I'm not blaming any of my colleagues, but I don't believe that you were given the correct information. But yes, let's move up to 5 years later. I still can't do it. I still have to look in terms of what is in the best interest for the children in the city of Pittsburgh. Not just the community that surrounds Schenley, but children came from all parts of Pittsburgh to attend that school. It is a high school that sits on a bus line that never stops, which is the 71 Lincoln. There are buses that come past that school every day. So it was easy access for the children to get in and out of that building. No, I cannot sell the building to make $2 million in hopes that we will get the building back on the tax rolls. I do not believe that we're going to get that much money out of the tax rolls for that building. However, I do believe if we really stopped and started to think about how we could utilize that as a school, we would actually receive more of our students back from wherever they went because we closed that building. And I also want to remind everybody that for all of the money that was spent in refurbishing Frick, who had just gotten a major uplift, and then was a renovation again on top of that within a matter of a few years. I can't understand why that actually happened. Moving those children then over to Rosenstein after you spent millions of dollars in that building, only for us to drive past there and watch that building being torn down and the millions of dollars that were spent there just within the past 5 years. Now you're going to have to redo Peabody in order to keep those children up to par in that building. We've spent a lot of money just on doing that, moving children back and forth. So there were mistakes made on both the board's part and the school district's part. But I am not willing to give up this building, not just for the history, but for what it means for the city to have our children in a school that they want to actually be in. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. Mr. McCray?
Thank you. When I came on this board about 12 years ago, we had a little white elephant sitting on Ruth Street, didn't we? Called South Hills High School, my alma mater. It was in such deplorable condition because the roof collapsed. You couldn't even go in the building without a hard hat. We can't afford to do that again. It cost us about $4 million to sell the building for what, $1 or something? We can't go down that path again. No matter what building it is, it's just a building. A school is more than just a building. It's the people that went there, it's the teachers that are there, it's the community that's there. Bricks and mortar, I mean, put a building, we should have kept the Civic Arena, just made one giant building for the whole district. Wouldn't have this problem. But nobody listens to me. But I don't want to see the same thing happen. I don't want to leave a white elephant for any future boards. So we have to get rid of Sinley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Mr. Eisler?
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. Mr. Weiss, 2 questions for you. One is this company that is buying the building, are they planning on asking this district or any of the municipal taxing bodies for a TIF?
No.
And then if you go to the 4th whereas the bid of PMC Shenley HSB Associates LP contained terms, conditions, and representations with respect to said purchase, do they have to follow through with what they laid out for us?
Yes.
Or could they flip it to a university?
Well, no, I mean, the proposal process, which was very thorough, does commit them to doing what they represented they would do in the proposal. They've presented some of their build-out plans to the board and the public a couple of weeks ago. So in my view, the agreement of sale will mirror the proposal, which will commit them to doing the things that they said they would do when they submitted their proposal.
If they don't, what's our recourse?
Well, I mean, it's an agreement of sale, and it's our job to ensure that the commitments they make are part of the transaction. So if they don't do it, we'll have the remedy of pursuing them to get it done. I just don't envision that happening, frankly.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shealy.
Thank you. Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. The question is sell or sell out. I went to Shenley. All of my family went to Shenley. It is an architectural gem in this area, maybe only rivaled by the Cathedral of Learning and Mellon Institute, Carnegie Library. Just to give a quick math lesson, when we first put Shenley up for bid, What year or when was that, Mr. Weiss?
It was in 2012.
Okay, 2012. From 2012 to 2013, Schenley has earned an additional $3 million. The first bid was 2.1. The current bid is 5.1. What's to say in the next year, the next 5 years, that that price couldn't go up higher? We know that there's plenty of interest, not plenty, but there's interest in the building. I don't think we've taken the time to truly talk about or exhaust the alternatives for that building. Schenley sits in my district. I haven't received phone calls. The phone hasn't been jumping off the hook. People haven't talked to discuss what effect selling Schenley might have on the community. And the community is not the 14 residents, the 14 Schenley farmers that showed up the other night. The community is not just the immediate housing surrounding Schenley. Those have been the only folks that have come here talking about selling the building. Is that NIMBY? Are they tired of having students from the Hill District and other surrounding communities walk past their houses on a daily basis to attend school there? It makes you wonder. The issue has been the sale of the building, and my concern is that the company that was hired, I was under the assumption that they were going to market all of our buildings, not just Schenley. And isn't it a coincidence that you hire a company to market a building and you wind up with the exact same bidder? Are there forces outside of this building or table that are influencing the actions? I always say there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. There was a letter from R. Daniel Lavelle, who is the councilman in that district, who in summation is not for selling the building, to return the building as a high school or return the building for use by students. And that letter is signed off by State Representative Jake Wheatley, Marimba Malines, who's the executive director of the Hill District Community Development Corporation, the Hill District Education Council, and the Hill District Consensus Group. There was a petition on the internet where hundreds, not just the Schenley farmers around the building, which are few, but hundreds of people saying that they were against the sale. Now, it's practical to understand that we don't have the immediate resources to address the concerns of Schenley. Numerous concerns regarding Schenley were brought about by this board. When the board put on the gymnasium and the pool facility additions to Schenley, did we consider the heating and ventilation system and the plaster, the floor tiles, all the insulation for all the heating ducts at that time, which contain asbestos? When we put on the new windows for Schenley, did we consider the heating, the ventilation system, et cetera? Through the years that Schenley has sat there, because it looks so great on the outside, did we give consideration to the inside? So some of this is brought about by the board itself. And I say we, even though some of us might not have been here at the time those decisions were made, but I say we because this is this board. I would like to see Schenley reused as in some educational aspect. the design of the building is so unique, and the design of the building exudes education. Having gone there, walking through the halls, knowing the design of the building, knowing the assets of the building, I think there is short-sightedness in that if we're talking about a 5-year span of time, that there should be a vision for the use of facilities over multiple years, not just within a 5-year time period. And the issue wouldn't be if there weren't factions on this board or a faction on this board that was pushing for the sale of the building. A side comment that I want to make at this time is that our process, and Ms. Shealy brought that to my mind, that if we were to table any item, that we at least go around the table first to get all comments before a motion to table, because it shuts down comment and conversation on items. That's just a recommendation for the operation of this board in the future, that if any individual were to table, that they hold that until each board member gets a turn to have a comment on that item, then the table could come after that. The initial vote on Schenley to close it was 5-4, and I would say if you re-polled the board members at this time, some may change their vote. It was a vote that was under a lot of duress, I should say, at that time. I had asked at the meeting when we were discussing bringing back the RFP at agenda review, and even though I was against bringing it back because I'm the one that initially wanted to table it, voted not to close the building. But I'm a realist, because at that time, the committee that was formed to look into the reuse, if the resources weren't there, you can come up with all kind of recommendations. But at that meeting, at that agenda review meeting where we were talking about bringing back the RFP, I had asked specifically, could the board have input on the upset price for Schenley? I had asked the question to Mr. Weiss, and I was told that at the Business and Finance Committee meetings that we would have that opportunity. That opportunity was not afforded. It was out, the RFP had went out without that opportunity. And the reason I say that is, had that opportunity been given, I would have lobbied to raise the upset price of Schenley. $4 million is not enough for a gem as Schenley. You retire the debt, you have $2 million to work with. What are you going to do with $2 million? So if you're going to take a facility offline that people are emotionally attached to, hoping something possible could come about for it, it was too low. So because of that, I have a problem or concern for the existing bids that have come in. Because if you don't say what to bid, they bid low. If you tell them what to bid, you come in slightly above that. Had we set that price higher, who knows what bid we would have gotten. But we do know there's interest. But even at that, in a year's time, it went up $3 million. In 2006, I had asked for a value-added method to be incorporated into the district, and was told at that time, we don't have the capability, we don't have the resources. But here we are in 2013 implementing a value-added method system. And nobody knew that we would be in a competition and be awarded $40 million to utilize in this district at that time. But it came about. Who's to say what resources may appear or may come online for Schenley? You can't say that. You can opinionate that you can't get a better price. You can opinionate that we have to act now, and if you don't, it's, you know, it really is a moot point, because if we don't do something for the district by 2015, it doesn't matter. We're not going to have funds for anything. So, in the sense that the true community of Schenley, which were the students that fed into Schenley and the parents affected and the surrounding communities, and we know that the Hill District primarily fed into Schenley, and that's the reason why the reuse of Malines was put forth, because you wouldn't want the Hill kids to have to go all the way out to Rosenstein. We know the monies were spent on Rosenstein to make the students comfortable, but had we considered the long-range use of monies instead of the short-sighted use of monies of what's happening now, what's going on in the immediacy of now, decisions might have been made different. This board needs a vision of the future, a vision down the road, not next week, not next Monday. It needs a vision to be able to look at items in a different light, not just what's happening this week or this month and what we have to do and what's before us. So again, for $2.1 million or for $5 million, and first of all, there's no comparison between Schenley and Rosenstein. Rosenstein was a 70s factory-built rectangular structure which would fall down faster than most of the buildings we have in the district. Going back to the consultant that was hired for marketing our buildings, Madison Elementary has been sitting closed longer than Schenley. Madison Elementary could be marketed into housing and perhaps satellite offices or offices for other organizations, nonprofits, or the city. The building sits like that. There's a main part with an addition. The only major cost would be to put in an elevator. There's plenty of space for parking because of the playground. So if we're about marketing our buildings and trying to make money, let's not just focus on one that one particular developer may be interested in. We know they want to buy it, and just sell it or shuffle it off to that developer. So I think to not make more mistakes on Schenley, that time may be needed. I mean, look how far we got within a year, and how many people came out of the woodwork and showed interest in it, and how many people around the city are concerned for it. That we not sell it now, that we not sell out now, and give greater consideration in selling it if it were to sell in the future. As I said, unless the resources miraculously appear, we know that we can't make that kind of investment at this point in time. But who's to say what we would do 5 years from now, 10 years from now? You don't know. Fifth Avenue High School was closed in the 70s, and it is just now being converted into market rate apartments and some mixed use in apartments in terms of different income levels. But it's just happening now. Again, there are enough other buildings. If we did this, maybe if we put for sale signs in the front of all of our buildings. Schenley's the only one I've seen a for sale sign put in the front yard. So we hired a company to put up 2 for sale signs. None of the other buildings have for sale signs, but they're all up for sale. So,
Mr. Sumter, I don't want to get you off track. I'll take the responsibility, and then they wanted to put for sale signs on. They've done their work, but we have to review it with Dr. Lane and the board before I allowed them to put other for sale signs on. I understand your point, but I just want to make it clear that they've been doing the work we've asked them to do.
thank you for the interruption, Mr. Camarda.
My apologies.
No, I thanked you. It's no problem. All the things that I've been saying, I think there needs to be more time on Schenley, and I question the rush of wanting to sell. But again, the lack of consideration for the community, lack of consideration for elected officials that have spoken out in favor of, lack of consideration for the board member who's from that community in terms of not having, we shouldn't have to wait till a legislative meeting to have the long drawn-out discussion, debate, whatever. It's better to be in an environment where we can let our hair down, it's property, and just talk about it. And talk about where each individual's coming from and why. Because when you see politicians stay the course and then all of a sudden switch the day before the vote or a couple days before the vote and switch their tone, you wonder who has gotten to who, who's called who, or what influence there is. But again, because we weren't involved or given the opportunity, even at my request, to set the upset price, and because I hear about all the wherewithal of this developer and all the properties that they own and everything that they can do, I have a concern for selling Schenley for $5.2 million. The Frick Environmental Charter School, that building, what was that, the name of that school before it was? Regent Square. Okay. Okay. I always get that confused with Park Place because when I was with HUD, we did Park Place. We made Park Place into apartments. We did Coriopolis High School. We made that into apartments. So I know how easy it is to come in and take rectangular shaped rooms and convert them into apartments. Anybody, any developer with sense or some resources would jump on Schenley at a low price to convert into apartments. The Regent Square School sold for $3 million. I don't think there's any comparison between Regent Square and Schenley. I don't think that Schenley is only $1.9 million more than Regent Square, or $2.2 million more than Regent Square building. But yet we accepted $3 million in one, and we're taking $5 million on this. It just, the numbers don't add up. You can look at Schenley and tell it's worth more than what was offered for it. So, because this is the only opportunity to get everything out or get information out before the vote is taking place, and because we have to do it at this point in time, I'm taking this time to do that. And that's really the crux of, you know, if we're to be a more effective or efficient board, or we're to improve the governance of this board, those critical items is what gets discussed. But people, the community is torn over this building. And I think this board is tearing the community over this building. And that's why some members voted not to close it, voted to table the request for a proposal, and you do whatever you can to stay the course, but those who, for whatever, well, I understand the reasons because I've been involved in selling some of our buildings here. However, my only concern is that we can do better. The time is not right tonight. It would be a mistake. It would be a rush to judgment. And it's not hurting us taking any more time to make informed, educated, intelligent decisions, but looking down the road. So if it could be returned as an educational facility, whether it's inside the district or outside, that would be my preference because it looks like an education facility. Students live all around Schenley High School, live past Schenley High School. And I'm sure graduate students or students with all the wherewithal of the resources or the backing or come from well-to-do families would jump at moving into Schenley instead of the apartments down on Neville Street or Morewood or Melwood, the other streets around there, because that's where you see banners for student housing hanging all over the place. So again, it's not trying to delay in terms of making an intelligent decision, not delay in terms of doing what we need to do. So there's a right way and there's a wrong way to do things. Schenley deserves more consideration based on, just look what's happened based on selling Schenley. How many people have turned out? How many people have taken sides? And again, the NIMBYism, or the concern of the immediate residents, which is we don't want an educational facility around us, and we really don't want one where Hill District kids feed in. That's the feeling I get. So Hill District, Oakland, surrounding communities, I know when I went to Schenley, folks came from the East End, getting off the 82 Lincoln at that time, and came from Lawrenceville, came from South Oakland, came from all over. But we have to be realist. We have to know whether or not Schenley could be returned as a high school in the district, but if not, if while it sits we could use the the athletic facilities, if not, until it does sell. But again, my point is that the bid is too low and that we should go back to the drawing board. It's scare tactics to say, if people could have said that about the first bid and said that we wouldn't have done any better than that. But it again, within the year's time, it went up. Schenley appreciated. So again, because we've had some innovative offers or some innovative recommendations for the building, I think we should consider them or give more time to discuss it. And if you want to sell Schenley next year, it's not going to take the district under. But at least let's hear the information before we rush to judgment. Again, sell or sell out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Anyone else? Mr. Bentley?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of things clear. It was mentioned by a couple of my colleagues that we've been fighting the Schenley or dealing with the Schenley for 5 years, and why so many years and why it takes so long and so on. Because part of the problem is 2008, Mark Roosevelt, then superintendent, told us when he lined up his votes to close Schenley under a lie, he then said that what we're going to do is, he said, I will put together an ad hoc committee that will study the Schenley building to determine its highest and its best use. Mark Roosevelt never formed the committee. He never moved forward with anything. On the record, I've made 2 requests for a list of the people appointed and or minutes. Never received anything. Nothing was never formed. So when we talk about that, this whole thing from A to Z stinks. This is a clear how-to in terms of how do you steal a public asset. And when you look at it from the beginning of the 2008, from the holding of information, no one investigating that, and then those individuals privileged to withhold the information and never sharing it, but allowing us to make a decision based upon some of the things that we did not receive. This whole thing is just, it was just bad from the beginning. And so somebody was obviously working from a different plan back then. They're still doing it here. And one of the things that I think that we have to really keep in mind when you're dealing with the Schenley, because a lot of folks were saying, well, why are you so concerned about Schenley? Why is it Schenley? Well, Schenley has become a symbolic figure for the waste and the questionable closings of schools in this district over the last 8 years. There was not a big issue when this district a year or so ago just woke up one morning and said, we'll close Northview Elementary. Public housing, most are fixed incomes, most have no vehicles. We walked up there and shut down the campus. shut it, a newer building, shut it down, and now those parents, when they have to try to go to school and to get involved with their children's activities, they either have to get a bus or a car to get there. Nobody got upset with that. But for Schenley, look at all of the different things that we've been putting in place. If you look at even just a resolution, it says it's a resolution of the Board of Public Education and the school district authorize the sale of Schenley. Well, they talk about the board in that little statement, but the third whereas is where the bids were reviewed by the RFP Review Committee, and a recommendation was made upon those reviews towards the sale of the PMC Schenley HSB Associates. Well, right then you put in an extra step. We put a committee, a panel together. And that's not the board. That is to give the indication to those of you that there's a voice on high, higher than the board, that made the recommendation. It is our professional opinion, and we research and we study. This is what you have to do. And they released statements, and we actually ran with it. Dr. Lane, you were out of town last week. I made my comment that I was disappointed in your comment, because you made the comment or sent out a release after submitting those numbers that in so many words, we can't afford these figures are too high. And that was, in my opinion, it was so inappropriate for a superintendent to do that without talking to its board and without giving a formal presentation to the board on this. So this whole thing from A to Z has been handled so differently and so wrong in a way where it just totally bypassed the board. It totally, in some cases, was full of propaganda to get folks to believe or to think in a certain way so that you would never, ever get the real information on it. And here we are now. We will continue on with a very, very divisive vote. So I just want to remind folks that especially those who are out there, who in the viewing audience, that when we move forward, we have to now become seekers of truth. Yes, they may have found a slick way of taking this from the students, but we have to find, there's a lot of documentation out there, who lied, who withheld this information, and look at its impact on this district. And look at how it continues to roll, because no matter how much we try to look like we work together and we're together, it is about race, just as we witnessed with the vote here. My white colleagues often, you rarely are coming to the African American community to check anything out. And so when this kind of issue comes down, the first thing that they think is, wait a minute, it's not in my neighborhood, doesn't bother me. I'm not impacted by it. Let them deal with that. And so no matter what way we slice it, this is what it eventually comes down to be. It is sad. It is sad. And finally, there was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was an article in the local paper that talked about another national study that in so many words, and I'll paraphrase it, they said that they asked white people in Pittsburgh their experience or how do they like Pittsburgh, and oh, we love it, it's wonderful, it's great. And they asked African Americans, and most of them said if we had the resources, we would move, we would leave, because the conditions are so bad. And when you look at something like this here, where now they're not even concerned about our kids. Before it was like hands off. Okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. Okay, don't mess with the kids. But now when you can come and do something like this to the children, it lets you know what we're dealing with in this city of Pittsburgh. And this school board is not exempt from it, regardless of who's at this table and who they're affiliated with and what public face that they put on. They are still involved with the racial kinds of things that makes it very, very difficult to make public education work in the city of Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Mr. Sumter?
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Because I do have a background in housing development, because I do have a background in community development, because I have a background in environmental protection, because I was in Schenley in 2008 and took pictures and looked at the building and saw it, I understand the circumstance that that building sits in. The concern I have is that I feel that board members should be given the opportunity to honestly face each other and discuss the pros and cons of selling Schenley at this time. So to afford that, I'd like to make a motion that we table item 17.
It's already made, Mr. Sumter.
Was it made?
Defeated.
My bad. My bad. I've been pontificating and talking for so long that, no, it's till some places get very warm or other places get very cold. I have enough concern for how things are going down, the lack of communication between board members, the concern for which community speaks for Schenley, and it's not the Schenley farmers. When you, again, as I've mentioned before, receive communique from elected officials, receive intelligent dissertations by former students, and still, in spite of, and the petitions and the possibility for other options, to squash all that and not consider it, I do have concern. Thank you, Ms. Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Seeing no addition, Mr. Sumter?
Mr. Weiss, correct me if, I know I tabled the charter school, or spoke to, no, what I'm saying.
Mr. Brentley made a motion to table.
Okay, we made the motion. Okay, fine, I'm sorry. If I did, I did. No, if I did, I did. That's okay.
I don't believe that you made the motion to table item 17. I
True.
believe that Mr. Brentley made the motion.
Okay, and Ms. Holly seconded.
Yes.
Right, okay. And this motion got voted down to table this item.
Tabling was defeated 4-5.
Okay. Which is along the lines of the desires of the individual board members as to sell or not sell. And the refusal to want to talk. That's quite interesting. I do have a background in social relations also, so it's putting all of this in very clear sight and perspective of what's happening. Thank you.
Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brentley?
No on the entire report.
Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes, on the report as a whole, I vote no on number 7, which is on page 3 of 5.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda?
Yes.
Dr. Holly?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on number 17.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes on the report as a whole, and no on item number 7, page 3.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on item 17.
Ms. Shealy?
I think at this point my vote doesn't matter, but I will vote no on 17.
Are you voting yes on the rest?
Yes on the rest.
Okay, the report's approved. The vote on 7 is 6-3, and the vote on 17 is 5-4.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. We will now move on to the report on personnel. Are there any questions, comments that haven't been addressed? Mrs. Khaleesi.
Thank you. There's only one comment that I'd like to make this evening. First of all, I'd like to congratulate everyone that is retiring. I wish them well, and I wish them a lot of fun years to come. But I would like to make a comment on Mrs. Lisa Fischetti that will be leaving us as well. I believe tomorrow is her last day, if I'm correct. I don't think a lot of people really know how long Mrs. Fischetti has been around and even how she came about. So just to give a little quick history here, Mrs. Fischetti was hired as a consultant back in 2001, if I remember correctly, and we hired her because we were closing schools and we needed some help in the PR portion of it. She had been asked by Dr. Thompson back then to come back and do some more work, and it kind of evolved from there, and as time went on, the board then continued to have Mrs. Fischetti around to assist us. I don't think a lot of people realize what her job is, and I wish her a great deal of luck, and she's a phenomenal, hard-working person, and I've always called her the glue, because I just don't think people understand what she does for the whole district to have covered all of us and all of everything we need. I know that a lot of people don't look beyond what's when they see someone doing something at that very moment, but Lisa's done a lot of work throughout the years, and I think that she deserves a good farewell from all of us, and we should all wish her well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi. I just want to go back and call out that the report on personnel includes addendums A, B, C, and D. Do you have something, Dr. Ali?
Yes, I too want to congratulate the retirements. However, I want to do a shout out to my colleagues, my principal friends who will be leaving the district, Dr. Deborah Cox, Dr. Jerry Mensinger, and Mrs. Barbara Sorzak. I'm sure that they'll be missed tremendously, but and I want to welcome them to the land of retirement.
Thank you, Dr. Holly. Mr. McCray?
I'm sorry. Good.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Fink. I please.
There we go. All right, I just wanted to say congratulations to all of our future retirees here, but I especially wanted to congratulate Sylvia Wilson on a long and varied career, who started in 1972 as a teacher at Spring Hill. She taught at Miller, she taught at Manchester, and then she joined the PFT as a staff member and has served for about 14 and a half years, helping all of her colleagues with any union issues. And I always considered her a friend, and I want to wish her all the best.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. And again, I apologize. Mr. McCray.
Just want to echo the congratulations to retirees, but also recognize our employees that are serving in the military and thank them for a job well done.
Seeing no other comments in the personnel report? Oh, Mr. Sumter?
Yeah, I want to congratulate the retirees also, and in particular, Sylvia Wilson and I. We had the fortunate opportunity to attend CMU together and graduate together, so we go back a little ways with that, but I didn't notice she started teaching immediately after graduation, but again, congratulations to all, and as Dr. Holly would probably say, welcome to the land of the smiling.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Now, seeing no additional comments, Mr. Weissman, will you have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brantley?
Yes, on the report, I am going to abstain on Q. There are some concerns.
Which addendum?
It's not an addendum, it's actually part of the report.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, section Q. And I think that's it.
Okay. Mrs. Khaleesi?
Yes.
Mrs. Fink?
Yes.
Mrs. Azuda? I'm sorry, I didn't see that she stepped out. Dr. Hawley?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on page 18, number 9.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on item 9 on page 18.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
The report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Because of end-of-year procedures, we do not receive financial or controller reports in January or February. The board will receive reports for December, January, and February at the March 20th, 2013 legislative meeting. Mr. Eisler.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. To Mr. Camarda, Mr. Joseph, even though we do not have documents in front of us, can you give us some indication of what the end of year will look like in terms of where we stand financially based on projections and what is the actuals?
Based on our early indications, we expect to close better than projected based on the strength of our better than expected real estate tax revenue and earned income tax revenue.
Thank you. One other question. Is it too early to anticipate what the reassessment process is going to bear for us, knowing that we did have a tax increase this year? Is it too early to say whether we're going to be up or down?
In terms of because the
Terms
reassessment...
basically a real estate, I'm sorry, just to the real estate based on reassessment.
It's too early to assess the effects considering bills just went out, I believe, a few
And the
weeks
discount
ago.
rate is extended to the end of March, so it is way too early. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Eisler. There are no new business items before us tonight. Are there any other items that need to be brought before the board for a vote? That require a vote? Seeing none, are there any announcements to be brought before us this evening that do not require a vote? Mr. Brentley.
Yes, I want to give to you, Dr. Lane. I had, last month, I think I mentioned I attended my annual board recognition day in January at Allegheny Traditional Academy. And I had breakfast with the elementary students, and then we had a question and answer period. Middle school, I had lunch, and it was really, really a wonderful, wonderful time to sit and to talk to the students and just allow them to ask questions. But at the elementary section, along with little gifts that they presented me with, they presented something that was a first that I can recall, and I want to present it to you, Dr. Lane. It said, Mr. Brentley, to show that we are willing to pay for our kids' education, we want to give you a check in the name of the ATA and the PTO Elementary at Allegheny, and in the bottom of the notes section it said, in the name of Mr. Brentley, on behalf of the Allegheny Traditional Academy, PTO. This is a $100 donation that is written to the Pittsburgh Promise. And I just thought that was so nice. And I told her, and I told the president, Ms. Gianni Haley, that I would mention that and I would take the check and I would do this. So all of her student council folks will see that. But I just thought it was so nice. And so I received this last month, and so I held on to it for our legislative meeting. So I want to pass that on, Doctor, if we can get it to the appropriate individuals. So it's the first time someone's paid something in my name. So what an honor.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley, and we'll be sure to write a note to Allegheny
That would be
to
nice.
thank them for this.
That would be nice. The second thing I wanted to mention is the talk of the weekend was the event at the basketball game at Peabody. The Westinghouse girls played the Allderdice girls, and the Westinghouse boys played the Perry boys. But I have some comments concerning that, but I first want to suggest, Dr. Lane, if we can start our planning now, next year and for years to come, when we have a city championship game, it should be held somewhere other than our facilities. And I think we've established a long enough relationship with the local colleges to work out a relationship where they would allow us to use their facility, because it is important. I never played basketball, never played football, but it means a whole lot to a lot of folks, especially in terms of school and identity for the school and for the students. But I'm just hoping that we reach out and establish something with one of the universities, especially those that we send checks to every year through the Pittsburgh Promise, that are receiving some of our kids. So if we can make sure that our kids are exposed to that, and it would be wonderful for them to play on a large, professional, regulated court, and to have, you know, the professional settings and all the things that the colleges and university have, I think it would be a wonderful experience for them to be able to have. But I want to say that of course, my school was Perry High School, and I was there at the game, and even though the Perry Commodores lost, it was one good game. And those young men worked very hard, and our students are the top of the line at Perry. But the Bulldogs were a little hungrier. Yeah. And they wanted it a little bit more. But not to mention, you know, I have to take this time out to say, they had a crowd. I mean, I thought they were going to close the capacity off in a couple of minutes, you know, because it was so.
They did for a while.
Okay.
They weren't letting people in.
Well, you know, there's one man that's responsible for that, and that is the president of the Westinghouse Alumni Association. I watched Mr. Reggie Bridges, Attorney Reggie Bridges. He was texting and sending and calling it worked. And when you looked across, he had an entire section just full of, I mean, old timers of Westinghouse folks who came out to support the team. And it was so good to see. There was so much pride, especially in light that I think that we, at some point over the last 7 or 8 years, that school's gotten a raw deal here. We have not put the best effort in putting programs there. We did not stand with them when they were creative programs, and they've had problems. But this was so well deserved for them, and so I have to acknowledge Mr. Bridges and his activism on this part. And so I just want to say to this staff as well as this board, we have to find ways to develop relationships with individuals with the kind of energy that loves this district. We have to be a part of them. And so coming to this meeting, Mr. Bridges wanted me, Dr. Lane, to give you T-shirt. And don't ask me how he knew it, but I talked to him, and he was 2 days before the game. So where are you? He said, I'm in the print shop making T-shirts. I said, the game isn't until Saturday. And so he had already claimed it. And I just thought it was so appropriate. But this is a T-shirt for you, Dr. Lane, and he wanted me to present it to you, and it says, which is so appropriate.
Well,
for Dr. No.
What size is it, Mike?
He said it's small. He said it was small. He thought it would be appropriate for her. But the T-shirt says, the House of Champions. And man, is that a great. Well, listen, and if it doesn't fit, I'm sure he has more. It'll work out. Well,
Ms. Comments about my T-shirt size, please.
But,
I'm sorry,
you know,
Dr. Lay.
He wanted to make sure that let me pass that down to him. He wanted to make sure that he passed it on to you, and they were just extremely proud. They are very, very happy, and I am hoping that this is the spark that can begin to turn the school around. And I'm asking that the staff, that we also be open in helping them turn it around. There's just a lot of pride in that school, man. These guys were, I mean, I knew we were in trouble when they broke out in that old cheer house, that old cheer, go, how, go, how, go, how, hey, beat that. When I knew they were going into that, as we're in trouble. But so I just wanted to say congratulations to them, and also a special shout out to the Pittsburgh Courier. On the front page of the Pittsburgh Courier, there's the mighty, mighty Bulldogs in Reggie Bridges' T-shirts. And Dr. Holly and Dr. Lane, everybody's there. I haven't even seen it yet because he just handed it to me. So make sure you all pick up the Pittsburgh Courier. And so we're just so proud and so happy for them. So congratulations to Mr. Bridges. He was the 6th player on that court because it was his involvement that helped the crowd to get out there. And they just love their community, and we love them for loving their school and supporting the Pittsburgh Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brentley. Mrs. Khaleesi?
Thank you. I just wanted to bring back up this evening that we did have our Skyping with Minadeo in Montagano, Italy, and then, of course, here in Pittsburgh. It was great. It was phenomenal. I think that we all enjoyed it. I think Dr. Lane was a little surprised on how quickly somebody can translate. I would like to recognize that my husband did do all the translating, and he kept up pretty doggone good. It was a lot of fun, and these kids were unbelievably phenomenal on both ends of the screen. We had our children asking questions, their children asking our questions in English because they wanted to practice, of course, English. And then we had a wonderful opportunity where Dr. Lane and their superintendent and, of course, Mrs. Wagner and their principal got to speak to each other as well. It was a great opportunity. It's something that I think we should be doing all over the world now that we are, social media is worldwide. We should be doing this everywhere, and it's not that hard to do. Especially with Skype, it's not that hard to do. We could get these kids together everywhere. It takes a little bit of work, it takes a little bit of effort, but if you're willing to do it, it's a great opportunity, especially if someone can't travel to any of these countries, they still get to see. And they get to see what we do as well, which they were very impressed with what our students learn and how they were able, and how, they were just amazed at the way our children sang a song of their own school. So it was a great and wonderful time, and for those of you that joined me, thank you, and Dr. Lane that joined us, and we'd like to really give Ms. Wagner a great deal of credit. She worked very hard, and so did Mr. David Maystein. So I would like to thank everybody that helped us out, and I appreciate everything that everybody did. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Khaleesi. Mrs. Fink?
Guys, we need a new thing over here. I'm having a little difficulty. The second Wednesday of March, I believe is the 13th. That, I know it's agenda review here, but the Cary Community Council is having their annual education meeting, and it's for anyone really, but the parents of children at Roosevelt, Concord, Southbrook, and Carrick High School. We will have the principals of those schools in attendance. There will be people there to talk about the Pittsburgh Promise, about SAT tests, what other opportunities are available at the secondary level. I don't have the list in front of me, but we have been doing an education meeting in the spring for quite some time now, but this is the most adventurous one we've ever tried. It's large. We've really expanded. Cindy Falls has really done most of the work on this and put it together. And we're simply issuing an open invitation to any parents or families that have children in our schools that want to come up and get some information. The meeting will be held at Concord School, and we will have a light dinner and then we will proceed with the meeting at 7 o'clock. So you're all invited. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fink. Dr. Hawley?
Yes, and Mr. Brentley, Mr. Gavlik, I want to give him credit for the work that he did for the basketball game as well. And I did have a conversation with him, and he is working on a different venue. Okay, he is working on that for next year, so that we can take our students to out of our regular high schools and have them play in another venue. Yes, sure.
Sorry, is he working on a better time too?
Yes, yes. Well, it was at 11 instead of later, and there was a reason for that. Well,
Yeah.
you know, Obama was having their snowball dance that night, and he had to turn his gym into a snowball fantasy land, which he did do. I mean, I came back and it was.
And let me interrupt you again, I'm sorry, but it was beautiful.
Yes, wasn't it? That was really a fantasy. I'm like, oh my goodness, this was all, okay. This was a gym 3 hours ago, but they really, the children were there and they had to change. That's the only reason why it wasn't at 12, which we really could have made it later if we were in another venue. So next year we'll do that. Hopefully he'll do that. I don't know. On March 15th, the Future Educators of America Club for Pittsburgh Public Schools will have a mini conference at Greenway, where we're going to have competitions in impromptu speaking, lesson plan design and implementation, and various other things that teachers do. I don't have the list in front of me. And the 3 schools that will be that are working on this is Brashear, their teacher center students, the Obama School, and Westinghouse High School. So if anyone is interested in attending that, we will be more than happy for you to come out. And that's on March 15th, and we'll be starting at 9:45 until 2 o'clock. And also, just to reiterate, we will have a Pittsburgh mayoral debate hosted by the Obama Academy students at 1:30 p.m. on March 17th. They'll be featuring Mayor Luke Ravenstahl, Councilmember Bill Batuto, and City Controller Michael Lamb. So I'm hoping that everyone will come out and support the students, because they've really done a lot of hard work on getting this activity together. And I'm really excited about it, and so is the community. So I hope that a lot of people will come out and support the students from Obama for this program. Thank you. Pardon me? It's a Sunday.
Thank you, Dr. Hawley. I'm sorry, Dr. Hawley. Mr. McCray. Ms. Sarser.
I just, sorry, I had a sidebar with Mr. Sumter on basketball games, and I would hope that we can find a suitable venue in the city and not have to go out of the city. There are enough gymnasiums that should be able to support our students. It used to be when the games were played on weeknights at 7 and 8:30, and they were incredibly well attended. And I just think that we ought to go for that as best we can. And I think that's really critical for our students, and especially our student athletes and our parents. I would hate to have to travel outside the city for it. So I do think that we ought to all put our heads together and see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iser. Mr. Sumter.
Thank you, Ms. Shealy. At the PIAA District 8 committee meetings, we have been talking about the venue and the timing. And depending on which schools get in the playoffs, determine where the game is going to be played, and maybe Obama assumed. However, the fact that they scheduled the game the same day as the playoffs would be, maybe they assumed. But still, things worked out, and people were considerate of what had happened, but it's hard to give people last-minute details or information about times and things like that, and expect fans from all over the city to get that information and show there in a timely manner. But it was well attended. Congratulations to Westinghouse girls and boys. What's unfortunate is that the playoff games, the PIAA District 6 playoff game was scheduled for last evening, but because of the inclement weather, it was rescheduled for tonight. And in instances like that, where you get short notice, plus the games were in Ebensburg, so you had to travel all the way up near Johnstown. What was crazy was that Westinghouse had to play Johnstown. Johnstown had a record of 6-15. Westinghouse had a record of 15-6 girls, but yet we had to go to Cambria County, which is closer to Johnstown. I would think the team with the better record, that's where the game would be located. However, the Carrick girls had to go to the same venue and play. Now, whoever wins those games, and I just got word that Westinghouse did win, they have to play tomorrow night. Not the same place, but a site to be determined. Same place. That brings up the concern that Mr. Bridges raised to me on yesterday evening, is that when we find situations like that, because of the resources the way they are, if need be, if the district could step in and provide transportation to and from the event to assure that we have a semblance of a crowd and following and support for the teams coming out of the city, because once you go outside of the city, it's a different story. The crowd is different, the referees are different, you get calls that you didn't see called all year long, so you have to beat the crowd, the referees, and the other team to win the game. But if we could show fan support, because my wife and I, we had planned to go, but because of this meeting, because of the votes and the items that were on the agenda for this evening, I'm here, she went there. And luckily she had her brother to go with her. That's something to consider in the future. Again, we've talked about venues at the PIAA District 8 committee meetings, and Duquesne University, there's a bad taste left in their mouth because of the incident that occurred in the parking garage. Had nothing to do with us, but yet the stigma of not letting our game appear there. We should be able to approach, I would think, University of Pittsburgh, because we have had graduations in the Peterson Event Center, and maybe that might be a consideration, because we used to use the Fitzgerald Fieldhouse, but they've taken up the floor there. We were saying our sidebar was CCAC, so that'll be brought back, and I'm sure getting Mr. Galvick to work on it. And again, the championship games were at night in the old days, which would be more conducive to fans getting there. But so it is what it is, but it's good to know that Westinghouse won, and hopefully Carrick will have won also. I had the opportunity of having breakfast at Miller African Centered Academy last month, of which was very interesting, because the Dream Keepers, which are the leaders of the school, there were 6 individuals who had breakfast with, and they took me on a tour of the building, and it was good. I saw every classroom in the building, kindergarten, all the way up through 5th grade, and I couldn't believe they were 5th graders as far as how they were conducting themselves. But I did get the opportunity to see how the iPads were being put to use in the building, and I understand that their proposal was one of the higher rated proposals, and they did receive over 200 iPads, but just to see the kids using them to know where they stood on PSSA competency, as far as what items they might have been deficient in, which items they needed to, they had mastered, how they compared to students within the city, students within the state. nice protective cases for them, so in case they were dropped, but just that they have mastered and are using them, and they're using them for their literature, for their math, and again for their PSSA competency, so that was good to see. The only, well, not the only, but the concern I have regarding when the city does have schools win championships, the lack of coverage by the local media, especially the television media. It was hard pressed to find scores, no highlights, maybe one game might have been mentioned, and these are Pittsburgh city schools, and these media outlets are located right here in the city. So it makes you wonder, you know, help us out a little bit, cover the stories. There are stories worthy to be printed, and especially with the Westinghouse girls, and I think all of you received a communique from Dr. Jones, husband of Phyllis Jones, coach of Westinghouse, but the fact that they have been in the championship game 26 years in a row. She's been there 24 years, and just an example of engagement with young student athletes, stepping in the void where there's family concerns or parental concerns, helping out special needs students that are on the team. And it's just goes to show if you go that extra mile to help kids, it pays off. But the girls basketball for next year, because Alderdice, Carrick, Westinghouse, and there's one other school that I might fail to mention, but a lot of their players are coming back, so it's going to be an exciting year again for girls basketball in the city of Pittsburgh. So just wanted to throw that out there, just if we could. And then also the games were recorded on PCTV, so stay tuned to that station. Of course you want to see us on there, but you might have the opportunity of watching the basketball games, the championship games also. But sometimes it's interesting. I wake up like 5 in the morning and I click on the TV and there's like board meetings going on. It's like, okay. But one other note, I did have the opportunity of meeting with representatives from the Office of Child Development out of the University of Pittsburgh, and those who run the Ready Freddy program, and they're working in 6 schools within the district. And we had talked about attendance being a big concern, but they have all kind of data on what happens to kindergartens if they attend the first day of school, if they don't attend the first day of school, how well they're doing if they make it to the 3rd grade, or proficient at reading or not, but et cetera. But I believe they're going to be meeting with officials in the district tomorrow to talk about that and what can be done to perhaps maybe expand that or add to the resources of that program. But they're increasing the enrollment, and again, the enrollment is, they had to add another classroom at Miller just because of that. The enrollment was up. So many students showed up on the first day of school there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumter. Dr. Lane, I'm sorry to beat this horse because it's time to go. But just on the basketball thing, I'm not sure that it was a lack of or overconfidence by Obama that they would be in the championship, or a lack of planning and coordination between the schools and the district that caused that conflict. But that 11 a.m. game is very hard for people to come out to. Westinghouse had the benefit of being really close to the championship location. But I'll give you another example. There was a playoff game between Alderdice and Obama at Brashear girls at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. Oh, my goodness. People from the East End cannot, who have a job, can't get to Brashear at 6 p.m. Well, they can, but it's very difficult. So just on the athletic tip or point, if we could do better coordination and use of our facilities and consideration of crowds, that would be great.
We will talk to Mr. Gavlik and see, as we develop a schedule for next season, that we'll do the very best we can to try to accommodate it so parents and other fans are able to attend the games, because they're much more fun for, I think, for young people when the stands are full.
Thank you, Dr. Lane. May I please have a motion? Mr. Brantley, go ahead, please.
PCTV did record it, and if you go onto their website, it will list all of the times of when you can watch the games. That the website is www.pctv21.org. www.pctv21.org, and they have a listing of all of the air dates for both games. And we do want to give a special shout out for them because they stuck around for both games, and we appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Brantley. Mrs. Khaleesi. Mr. McCray. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. This meeting is adjourned. I'd like to call the February 27, 2013 meeting of the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit to order. Mr. Weissman, can we please have a roll call?
Mr. Brantley? Here. Mrs. Khaleesi?
Here.
Mrs. Fink? Here. Mrs. Zuda is absent. Dr. Hawley? Here. Mr. Eisler?
Present.
Mr. McCray?
Here.
Mr. Sumter?
Present.
Ms. Shealy? Here. 8 members present.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Would board members please turn to the minutes from last month? Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? Could you give somebody a... Khaleesi, Eisler. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. The minutes stand approved. Please turn to the Committee on Education. There are no items moved for discussion at agenda review. Are there any comments or questions at this time? Seeing none, Mr. Weiss, may we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Brantley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi? Yes. Mrs. Fink? Yes. Dr. Hawley?
Yes.
Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Report's approved 8-0.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Please turn to the Committee on Business. Are there any questions on the report that were not addressed at agenda review? Seeing none, Mr. Weiss, may we please have a roll call?
Mr. Brantley?
Yes.
Mrs. Khaleesi? Yes. Mrs. Fink? Yes. Dr. Hawley? Yes. Mr. Eisler?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Sumter?
Yes.
Ms. Shealy?
Yes.
Report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. There are no personnel items this evening for the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit. Are there any other items to be brought before the board at this time? Motion to adjourn. Khaleesi, Fink. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. This meeting is adjourned.